She was a member here for many years along with her mother. She moved to Venice a little while ago and was just recently diagnosed with cancer. That is, there's nothing they can do about it. It's not treatable. So Vicki has now gone to Arizona to stay with her sister for the remainder of her time here on this earth. And so we want to keep Vicki in our prayers. We're going to try to get the address and information to you for where she's going to be staying in Arizona. But she still has her cell phone and that number, and so you can reach her that way. But we want to continue to pray for Vicki and just do what we can to encourage her from afar. We can't be with her right now, but we definitely want to be reaching out to Vicki and letting her know that we love her. On a much brighter note, though, there's a song that we sometimes sing that's really a prayer. And it starts out, Lord of harvest, send forth reapers. And it is always a blessing when God answers that prayer for us here at Pleasant Grove Road. When we have more people here to work in the kingdom, when we have more laborers here. And so today we're able to welcome some additions to our family. The information is in your bulletin for our sister Pam Whitaker. She sits up here in the front. She's kind of related to us. It's complicated, but she is. And so we're glad to have her here. She lives over in Crystal River. Her information is in the bulletin. She's going to be having some outpatient surgery here on Tuesday, so we want to keep her in prayer. But we want to welcome her to the family. And then we're also excited to have all the way from Wyoming, Jeff and Lolly Wilson. They sitting up here in the front. Wave your hands. There you go. They have let us know that they want to be identified with and work with the family here. Many of you have had an opportunity to get to know them a little bit already, and we're looking forward to continuing to serve with them, and we're just thankful to have them with us. They worshiped in the same congregation where the Jollies worship in Wyoming, and the Jollies went back for the summer, but the Wilsons are going to be with us year-round, so we're glad to have them here and looking forward to working with them. With all that said, let's get into our lesson this morning. Have you ever thought about what it means to have it all? You know, wouldn't you, we sing, there's a song out, I don't sing it, but wouldn't you love to have it all, right? You know, we often think about what that means to have it all. Well, what does that look like in today's world or today's society? In today's world, there are several things that come to mind. For me specifically, I think of different things, but there was a recent survey that was done, and this survey was done among young adults. I think it was ages 18 to 30, and they were asked, what does it mean to have it all? And they were asked to pick the top 3 things that to them are included in having it all in this world. The number one thing, this is probably not going to surprise any of us, when they thought of the idea of having it all, the number one thing was money. Money was needed in order to have it all. Number 2 was beauty, looks. They wanted to have their looks. That was important to them. If you're in that category, I can tell you that changes over time. As you get older, that becomes less and less of an issue. You just kind of settle into the realities of life, right? But beauty, looks. Number 3, and this one I cannot relate to, but it's important for that age group, followers. Social media followers were a sign of what it means to have it all. But then number 4 was the feeling of peace. Just being at peace. And then the last one was the appearance of being successful. To look like you're successful. Those were the ideas of having it all. For the reality, for each of us, we would answer that in a different way, right? We would all have different things that would be on our list of those things that are in our mind important to have it all. But the reality is the world's standards are always very much like that list. They're all those types of things of having success, having a good job, having a nice home, having a beautiful family, having all these different things that the earth, our life provides. We've been reading through the book of Job this week, and in the book of Job, you have a man here who, by the world's standards, had it all. We're going to start off this morning in Job chapter 1. I encourage you to turn there in your Bibles. We're going to be in Job 1 and 2 today. Now let's just start off this morning by reading the first 3 verses. It says, "There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. There were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He possessed 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys, and very many servants, so that this man was the greatest of all the people in the east." So here's Job. He's got 10 children. He's got lots and lots of livestock. He's got all of these servants. He is known all over the world, all over that part of the world anyway, for his wealth and for who he is. And so based on the world standards, Job had it all. He had it all. Everything but followers. But if he was around now, he would have probably had those too, right? Job had, by the world standards, he had everything you could possibly have. But the question I have to ask this morning is that all there is? Is that list of things, is that all it is? Because Job, he had it all, but then Job lost it all. He lost all of those things. He even lost his health. He lost everything earthly thing you could just about that you could lose. And yet, for Job, what he had could not be taken away. The thing that he had that really mattered could not be taken away. You see, for Job, it wasn't about these things. It was about his relationship with God. And that could not be taken from him. That he could not lose as long as he chose it. And so this morning, as we look at our lives, what are we focusing on when we think about having it all? Are we focusing on those things that we can lose? Or are we focusing on the one thing that the world can never, ever take away? We're going to walk through chapters 1 and 2 this morning, and there are 4 lessons, I think, that we see from these 2 chapters. The first one is this. Having it all does not guarantee a trouble-free life. Having it all doesn't mean that we're not going to have troubles or trials in our life. If you've ever followed social media, I have always found it very interesting. And since I am very much into the mental health side of things, and I look a lot into the way people function and what people do, I follow and look at social media quite a bit just to see what people present. And it's interesting that for most people, they present this picture that if all you ever saw was social media, you would think that every person under the age of 25, every boy under the age of 25, and I say boy, man and some boys under the age of 25, that they're all ripped. They've got muscles everywhere. They are super good looking. None of them have acne problems. You know, they are all just beautiful, beautiful people. The women in that age group, they're the same. They're just, all people in that age group are just amazing. amazing looking. Why? Because that's what's presented to us. That's the part we see. You know what we don't see? We don't see those guys who are, when they're, putting all the creams on their faces and now using makeup and all that stuff so they can look good in social media. We don't see that part of it. We see the part that they want to present to us, and they present to us this idea of what a wonderful life they have. And it's not just that. We see that in every aspect of life in the world. But having it all doesn't mean that we don't have problems. Having it all doesn't mean that life is trouble-free. Job experienced that himself. Let's read in Job chapter 1. We're going to pick up in verse 6. And we're going to read down through verse 19. Job chapter 6. And we're going to read down through verse 19. It says, "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, 'From where have you come?' Satan answered the Lord and said, 'From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil?' Then Satan answered the Lord and said, 'Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face.' And the Lord said to Satan, 'Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand.' So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And there came a messenger to Job and said, 'The oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them and struck them down, the servants with the edge of and struck the servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone escaped to tell you.' While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, 'The fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you.' While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, 'The Chaldeans formed 3 groups and made a raid on the camels and took them and struck them down, and the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you.' While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, 'Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young people, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you.'" So here is Job. He's a man who loves God. He's a man who has served God in every way, and God has blessed him. And now Satan attacks him. Satan attacks him because Satan is hoping to prove that if he just hurts Job a little bit, that Job will turn away from God. You see, this is Satan's number one tactic. This is what he uses over and over and over again. If I can just make you hurt, then you're going to turn away from God. If I can just cause you some pain or some discomfort, whether it be physical or emotional, then you're going to turn away from God. And that's what he thought of Job. And yet Job proved him wrong. Here, Job has done everything right, and yet in a moment, he loses everything. He had it all. Job had wealth. He had family. He had a relationship with God. He had reputation. He had it all. And in a moment, he lost so much of that. Here in one day, or it seems as if it was one day because it was one message after another, livestock, all of his servants. And then the final message comes that all 10 of his children have perished. He loses all of these things in one day, and yet he was a good man. Have you ever played the game Jenga? I want you to imagine that Jenga is a representation of your life. That a Jenga tower represents your life, and you've built that tower based on a lot of the things that we typically build on in this life. Our looks, our appearance, the way we present ourselves to people, our health, our children and family, our jobs, and the list could go on and on and on, of all these things that we build our tower of life with, right? As these pieces are removed, what happens to the tower? Eventually, if you keep playing the game, what happens? The tower collapses. It collapses. And all those things I listed are all things that we could possibly lose in our lives. And so the question this morning is, what is left when everything falls? What is left when all those things that we consider to be important in our lives, that matter to us in our lives, what happens when all those things are gone? Here's the real question, though. Where is your foundation? Is your foundation on those blessings, those things that you consider to be the blessings of life, or is your foundation built on a relationship with God? Because all those things that we consider to be blessings in life, they can go away. Many of us know what it's like to lose a lot of those things. There was a time when I put a lot of stock in my family and my children. And part of that was taken away. There was a time when I put a lot of stock in my name, in my reputation. And then things happened in our family that affected that name and reputation. And it was taken away. But you know what never left? My relationship with God. That relationship has never, ever faltered. It has stayed steady. It has stayed steadfast. No matter what I've lost, no matter what I've struggled with in my life, no matter what parts of that Jenga tower have fallen, what has been consistent in my life is God. And so what we have to ask this morning is, where is our foundation? Have we built our foundation on all these blessings in our life? Or have we built our foundation on God? But there's a second lesson that I think we see in these first two chapters of Job, and that is that integrity is more valuable than wealth. There are a lot of people in the world that have sold out their integrity for wealth. We vote for a lot of them when they run for office. There are a lot of people who have sold their integrity for wealth. They've sold out because they believe that those things matter most in their life. But Job recognized that what matters most is who he is, his integrity, his faith. Let's look at Job chapter 2. We're going to look at a couple of passages. We're going to start off with verse 3. Job chapter 2 and verse 3. It says, "And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job?" Now this is the second conversation that God has with Satan. And he says, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil? He still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him with no reason." God says, You were wrong. Now as you read on there, what you find is Satan says, oh yes, but you didn't let me touch him physically. All you have to do is let me touch him physically, hurt him physically, and that'll do it. And so God says, okay, you can do that. You just can't take his life. But you can hurt him physically. So Satan does that. He comes on him. He causes an illness or something that caused tremendous pain and hurt to Job. And so in verses 9 and 10, I want you to see the interaction that Job has with his wife after Job has lost everything and now is suffering physically. In verse 9 it says, then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this Job did not sin with his lips. Job here says, or Job's wife says, Job, you've been through so much. We have lost so much, and now you're hurting physically. Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just give in? Curse God, die, be done with it. And Job's response was, have you not seen? Have you not seen what God has done for us? Who are we to take the good things from God, but not acknowledge and accept the bad things when they come? You see, what happens in this interaction is we recognize that even Satan knows that Job's integrity is precious. And so that's where Satan attacks him. But Job refuses to curse God. Job refuses to give up his integrity. You know, if you ever go through a difficult time in your life, I encourage you to read through the book of Job. Another another book I encourage you to read is 1 Peter. 1st and 2nd Peter, actually. And Peter addresses this issue of our suffering quite a bit. And in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7, 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7, it says, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. What is more precious than any earthly thing? Our identity in Jesus Christ. That's our integrity. Our integrity is our identity in Jesus Christ. Who we are in Him. That is more precious than anything that we have in this life or this world. You see, your integrity is your spiritual wealth. And so I want you to consider this morning. I want you to consider, first of all, that your life is like looking in a mirror. And that is, and what you see reflected in that mirror is your integrity. But then, all these different things in your life start coming onto that mirror. All these stickers, right? Lies, compromise, shortcuts, disrespect, ego. All these different things come into our life. And what happens ultimately to integrity? It gets clouded over. It's no longer visible. When we start compromising, when we start taking on shortcuts, when we start taking on different aspects of sin into our lives, that integrity goes away. But your integrity is your spiritual wealth. It is your spiritual wealth, and so you have got to guard it fiercely. You've got to guard it with all that you have. And how do we do that? We do that by practicing honesty and purity in our daily life. We do that by focusing on being authentically like Christ in our lives. Even in the small things. Even in the things that we don't think matter. The way that we talk about other people. The way we talk to other people. The way we interact. The things that we make priority in our life. All of those things affect our identity in Jesus Christ, and they impact our integrity. You know, Job did not understand the why. Job didn't understand why the things happened to him as they did. But he did know who he trusted. That's integrity. You know, oftentimes we think we can sell out our integrity for just a moment. But once we lose it, it is awfully hard to get it back. Integrity matters. And for Job understood that integrity is more valuable than wealth. But then, number 3, real faith stands in the face of pain. Real faith is going to stand the test of pain. It is going to stand the test of all the challenges that we face in life. Let's go back to the book of Job for just a moment. Job chapter 1. Let's read verses 20 through 22. It says, Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshipped. And he said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. You see, Job did grieve. But ultimately, Job praised God. He never lost his faith. Have you ever taken a lemon, cut it open, and squeezed it? I think most of us have had that experience. Have you ever done that and had apple juice come out? No. What happens when you squeeze a lemon? Lemon juice comes out, right? Why? Because what is inside comes out when it's pressed. Job was pressed and faith came out. Job was pressed and what came out was faith, not cursing God, not a loss of integrity. Why? Because what was on the inside of Job was his faith. But here's an important point this morning. That is, don't confuse emotion with faithlessness. Job had emotion. Job grieved. Job felt pain. Job mourned. But then he worshiped God. He praised God. You see, we have got to train our hearts now to respond in faith when life presses hard. We've got to train our hearts when things are going well, so that when we are pressed in life, what comes out is not cursing God, questioning God, walking away from God, but instead what comes out is just faith. Trusting Him. Even when we don't understand, even when we don't have all the answers, just knowing that God does, that God gets it. This morning, what comes out when you're pressed? We need to train our hearts now to respond in faith when life presses hard. But that leads us to the final point this morning, and really the ultimate point. And that's this. We only have it all when we have God. We only have it all when we have God. Don't allow Satan to fool you into believing that all the trappings of this world are the answer to having it all. You know, there are a lot of good things in this life that we can participate in and be a part of, but if we're not careful, they can trap us. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to look good and present yourself well. But if that becomes the focus of your life, what do you have? You know, I'm going to get in trouble now. I recognize that. But, you know, I've always, as a man, I've always found it really interesting that when women have their pictures made, there is a standard pose. It always includes a leg, like somewhere, you know, and it's like this or something like that, you know, that they got to do. You know, I've never understood that, right? But there's this pose that you have to do. It's a requirement to have your picture made, you know. And yes, I am now in a lot of trouble. But the reality is we look at that, and as men we say, that's ridiculous. We all do it in different ways. Every one of us does it in a different way. It doesn't matter whether we're male or female. It doesn't matter if we're old or young. We all have these things that we want to be perceived in a certain light. We want to be seen in a certain way. And we don't want anyone else to see us in anything but that, because in our mind, that is what matters. What happens when you don't have that anymore? What happens when that's gone? You know, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I fell and hurt my knee and had a lot of issues as a result of that. And there was a period of time with that, and then with some other health issues that I had trouble just getting up and down off the stage. And there was a time when I used to run up and down the stage. You know? And it mattered to me that I had that perception. I was perceived as being energetic and young, and then all of a sudden I couldn't even get up and down off the stage. And I went through this period of just really struggling with how I was being perceived and seen, because I couldn't do the things that mattered to me. You see, we all struggle. We all struggle with going through those things in our lives. And if that's what matters to us in life, then we're going to live this life sadly disappointed. Because we're going to be constantly losing those things in life. Job, he had it all. But for Job, what made him rich was actually not his wealth. What made him rich was not his family. What made him rich was not his health. It was his faith. It was his character. It was his relationship with God. You see, those are the things that made Job rich. So this morning, what about you? If everything else was taken away, would you still have what matters most? Would you still have what really matters in your life? You know, I've heard Christians say over the years that family matters the most. And I get that. I understand it. But what happens when you lose family? If that's what matters most in your life, what happens when it's gone? There is still God. He is the family that you will never, ever lose. I want you to look at the PowerPoint for just a moment. There on the PowerPoint you have 4 things that I think represent aspects of our lives. You have family and home. You have the trophy there represents just being successful in life, whether it's your job or school or whatever you do. have the cross of Christ, and as Christians, that's a part of our lives. And then you have money. Just being able to do the things in life you want to do financially and having that peace of mind. That's how most of us live our lives. But what happens when the money is gone? What happens when the success is gone? What happens when our family is gone? What's left? Always the cross. The cross of Christ, that sacrifice, the greatest gift that has ever been given, it never, ever goes away. It is always there. And so this morning, are you building your life on things that can be taken away? Are you building your life on things that could be gone in an instant? Do you have the kind of faith that can survive the losses that we deal with? This morning, the reality is, if I were to ask you to come up and start writing on the walls all the things that you have lost in your life, we have probably, I'm estimating, just over 100 people in the audience today. If we all came up and just started writing on these walls all the losses we have faced in our lives, we would fill up this wall, that wall, and probably all the way around. We've all dealt with loss. We've lost people we love. We've lost health. We've lost wealth. We've lost pride. We've all dealt with loss in our lives. The question is, do you have the kind of faith that will survive it? That will get you through it? This morning, the invitation is to come to Christ and have what can never be taken away from you. Salvation, purpose, eternal hope, those things can never be taken away. Those are things that as long as you choose to hold on to them, they are yours. You have them. You will never lose them. This morning, won't you choose faith? Because that's what it means to have it all. If you're subject to the invitation,